Hi everybody, my name is Hannah and this is Pepper and Pine and I have a recipe to share with you today. This recipe comes from the Eating Well magazine, the September 2020 issue. Now this is a really delicious recipe that my children loved the second they tasted it. Now it's pretty simple, especially if you use store-bought hummus, and I do have a video on how I make my own hummus, but we're just going to focus on everything else in this recipe. So I've headed to the backyard in order to get some fresh cilantro, and I'm going to end up having about 2 tablespoons of cilantro. I've cut up about 2 cups of chicken, both chicken thighs and chicken breast, and to that I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of olive oil. So the spices are pretty simple. I've got 2 teaspoons of cumin, 2 teaspoons of paprika, and if you like spice, you can add a teaspoon of cayenne. Now I've altered the recipe a little bit to add about a teaspoon of harissa. Next, we're going to sprinkle it with a little bit of salt and we're going to thoroughly mix it. Now, while I'm mixing all of this, I have the oven preheating. It's on the broil function, but we do want it nice and hot before we put our chicken in the oven. So that's been preheating for about 5 to 10 minutes. I've spread this all out on a sheet pan and now we're popping it in the oven to broil for about 5 to 7 minutes. In the meantime, we're going to work on the sauce. So I've got about 4 to 5 cloves of garlic. I am using my large mortar and pestle in order to grind it up. And actually, I'm just pounding it directly on my cutting board. I'm going to put that into a bowl and work on the lemon juice. I'm going to juice 1 lemon. Now, this one's quite large and really juicy, so I end up with a lot of sauce at the end, but that's okay. It's super delicious. So delicious, my kids asked for it the second we were done. So now I'm going to add about 2 tablespoons of olive oil to that lemon juice and garlic, and my own addition, an additional 1 tablespoon of harissa. So I'm going to mix that all together and sprinkle it with a little bit of salt, and this is going to become the sauce that we're going to drizzle over our chicken. So after 5 minutes, our chicken is completely done, and so I'm going to check on it, and it is, and so we're going to remove it from the oven. And I'm going to put it into a bowl. You can see that it's filled with so much flavor, but we are going to add even more. So I'm going to take about 2 spoonfuls of this mixture that we made. And while the chicken is still hot, I'm going to drizzle it over the chicken and just kind of toss it and give it about 5 minutes for really those flavors to mix together. So now it's time to work on the rest of the ingredients, and it's really simple, very light and delicious. So I have 1 Persian cucumber and I'm going to slice it in half, and then we're going to slice them into half moon shape and put that aside. I also have half a red onion that I'm going to give some thin slices to and put that aside as well. I'm doing a rough chop for my cilantro, and then I'm going to cut in half about 1 cup of cherry tomatoes. So now comes the fun part, and that is plating it all together. Now previously I've already made my hummus, and you can find the link to that recipe down in the description box below. I also already made our basmati rice, and you can also find that recipe down in the description box below. So I have put both rice and hummus on the plate. The original recipe does call for bread, but we swapped it out for rice instead. And now I'm going to plate the rest of the things. Now I'm making this all pretty, but my children all have their own variations on what they like. Some of them like the tomatoes, some of them don't. And so I'm going to plate this one the way that the recipe shows, but my children all have it a little bit differently. So I've added tomatoes and cucumbers and some onions, and I have garnished it with that cilantro. And the last thing is to drizzle it with a little bit of that lemon sauce, which tastes amazing. And of course, we're going to drizzle the whole top with a little bit of olive oil. This recipe was so delicious. It's so light and healthy. We really enjoyed it, and we can't wait to make it again. I do hope that you'll try this out. So this first plate went to my 19-year-old son. So I've got my daughter here who's 10, who is so anxious to hand it over to him because she wanted her own, which was a little bit different than the one that he had. All right, so I hope that you tried this recipe. Don't forget to check out the blog post that accompanies this video. You can find that link down in the description box below. If you'd like to check out some of my other cooking tutorials, you can tap on the screen right now. And if you'd like to see what we're cooking and what we're eating on a daily basis, you can find me on Instagram at Pepper and Pine.